Hi, my name is Jonathan Hicks. I'm back at the Dice Cup, and this evening I'm joined by
Andy, Mark,
and we're just finished playing Heroes of Terrinoth, which is an adventure game essentially. So each of us takes a hero. In this case, I was Landrek the Wise, a mage, and I think Andy, you took a warrior character, didn't you? And Mark, you were a healer, is that right? Okay. And then there's a particular quest we're trying to do. So in this case, we were trying to get the Cursed Codex, and there's various stages in the game. There's a kind of setup in terms of a monster deck that you set up. There's a bunch of exploration cards that vary depending on the scenario as well. And then you also have some locations. And in this particular quest, we started off in, it was a bad place, I seem to remember, the Bloodguard Tomb, and we had to kind of fight our way through a big pile of monsters. And then we went to the town gates, and eventually ended up in this alchemist lair. But for this particular quest, we're trying to get through the locations. You can see at the bottom right that you need a certain amount of progress on the locations. And if we managed to get through all the locations, then we escaped and we would have won the game. But unfortunately, we all died and we lost. Now, how do you play the game? Well, on your turn, you have 4 activation cards. And each of the heroes' cards are slightly different, but they broadly speaking do the same thing. So you have one card that attacks. You see I have this lightning rune card. And the way attacking works is you're going to roll a certain amount of dice, the white dice. But every time you use one of your cards, the enemies engage with you. In this case, the big boss guy, the nemesis Axel, was engaged with me. He's potentially going to attack as well. So you sort of collect your dice. So I get 3 white dice if I'm going to attack. And because there's one enemy engaged with me, I roll 1 black dice. And you roll them and see what you get. And you're looking for stars. A star is a success. Well, this is the burst symbol, which means it gives me a success. And then I get to roll it for an extra one. Oh, that's great. So that's plus the burst, 1, 2, 3, 4 successes. And he got a blank, which means he missed. So he didn't do any damage to me at all, which is great. If he'd get this symbol, he would do his attack, which would be 2 damage. This is his armor, so he's going to absorb 3 of my 4 damage, and I would do 1 damage to him. And you just track the damage like this with the little tokens. So that's how attacking works. But a lot of the cards will then do other things. So I could have become engaged with an extra enemy if I wanted to. Maybe Mark was in trouble, and I could have taken the Wraith off him before fighting. Then I kind of do my attack. And then in this case, if I defeat a card, an enemy, I can ready one of my activation cards, because after you've used a card, it becomes exhausted. And then we would each take a turn using our other cards, and then potentially if it comes back to me, I can't use this card anymore because it's been exhausted. Other cards would allow you to aid somebody, so in this case you roll the same white dice, and if there's an enemy engaged with you, you'd be rolling black dice as well. But this time, any successes you get give you success tokens. So if I was aiding Mark, I'd be giving him these success tokens. And on his turn, he can spend this to kind of guarantee an extra star for whatever action he's trying to do. You know, I said we wanted to try and get progress on the locations. Well, most of us are going to have some kind of explore card. So in this case, I'll be rolling my dice. And the successes that you get when you roll the dice when you're exploring give you the progress tokens that you add onto the location. You can see in this case, we're trying to get up to 6. And then potentially other things here. So, and finally, obviously at some point, all your cards are going to become exhausted. What do you do then? Well, you'll have one card that will allow you to ready all of your other activation cards, and will typically heal you a bit as well. So I can roll dice. In this case, the successes will allow me to heal damage. You've got a certain amount of health at the start of the game. And then I get to ready all the rest of them. So you kind of go through this cycle of deciding which cards to use, and then finally playing your healing one, which will let you ready and get back into the action. After we've all had our turns, the monsters get to fight, so they're going to have a sort of set things that they're going to do. So this Wraith will retreat to start with and go back into the shadows. There's a certain number of monsters over here in the shadows in the middle, and then it inflicts its damage, so that would do 1 damage to me from the shadows. Some of them might advance, so this reanimate warrior is going to shield bash, but then advance, so he was actually going to engage somebody. And this was the big boss who was doing all kinds of crazy things. He kind of moves around following this book wherever it goes, and then causes people potentially to take damage and exhaust cards. He was pretty bad and really hard to kill. So yes, they have a turn, and then you're going to advance this little marker here, which does different things depending on the colour. So like if it's a green one, you'd sort of resolve the top one. For a blue one, which is just landed on here, you'd be resolving the blue one. So different things are happening at different stages in the game. It's like a time tracker. After that, you check to see if you've got enough progress on the quest. If you have, you move on to the next one. If it's the final one, then potentially you win. There's a nice bit of flavour text. There's kind of introduction to the story here, which explains setup, and you kind of get victory or defeat text depending on how well you did. And again, comes with a whole pile of different scenarios, so there's plenty of variability in the game. So yeah, essentially that's it. What do we think?
I really like this. It's initially when it was released, I got confused and thought this was an LCG. Even though before it was released, I knew what it was. It was a retheme of Warhammer Quest by FFG. But yeah, I got confused. And when I realised what it was, I picked a copy up, and yeah, it's really good. The scenario the rulebook tells you to try first is very easy, but it is quite a good introduction. But it does give you sort of like this sense of, is this going to be really easy? But the 2 scenarios I've played multiplayer have been really difficult. The first one was, I can't remember what it was called, Siege of Asthill, and that was quite brutal. This one was also quite brutal. It looked like it was going to win, then the victory was snatched away from us at the last moment. It feels quite tight most of the time. There's the way you activate your cards, especially when other things cause you to exhaust cards, because you never want to have all 4 exhausted, otherwise you'll gain a load of damage. Yeah, it is quite tricky in working out what the best thing to do at that turn is sort of like. But yeah, I've just forgotten what I was going to say. But yeah, it also scales quite well with different player counts. Because at 3 players, you choose one of the players to act again, and 2 players it alternates between the actions. So you'll play player 1 will do 1 action, then player 2, then player 1, then player 2, then it's the end of the round. So there's always 4 actions taking place every single round, which is quite nicely balanced. It's quite a nice game. Okay. Possibly overlooked as well.
Okay, Mark?
Yeah, I think of all games within recent times, I mean, in recent games that I've played, I think this is a very unassuming game. It comes in a little small box, and you think, oh, it's going to be a little bit of a little light card game. We cooperate, and we do stuff together. That's nothing like this. This is an incredibly intensive cooperation game if you play it more than 1 player, where you're constantly trying to work out how to combo your stuff against what they're doing, against what monsters are comboing. There's a lot of depth in that box that you don't think you're going to get it, especially at the price point it's at. It's really good. There's loads of variation in the scenarios. There's loads of variation in the characters. The characters do generally feel quite different with their sets of cards they get. Also, there's the levelling on characters, so we all level differently, and each character can level down 2 paths, so they have to even more. Monsters play and attack differently, so the amount of content you're getting for a relatively small price point is really quite good. It's tough. It's fun, there's lots of thinking, lots of chatting between players to optimise because of the trickiness, which is really important in a quantitative game. I'm not necessarily sure it feels like I'm exploring a dungeon or anything like that. It more feels like I'm dealing with the monsters that are in front of me or on the board, now helping other people deal with it. But other than that, it does what it does very good for everything you get, and I think, as Andy said, I think it's maybe overlooked, and I think it deserves to do better than it does, because I think for what they're offering, you're getting a really, really good value for money. Lots of play time, and you don't get that as much these days.
Rating?
I'm not sure it's something I want to play all the time, because it's actually quite stressful, but I think for the amount you get, I'd give it an 8.
Okay. Andy?
Yeah, I'd be on about an 8 as well.
Okay.
So, plus with this sort of style game, FFG will probably release small box expansions, so just like an extra deck of cards, just to give you some more scenarios. I think we did that with Warhammer Quest. So yeah, sort of like a lot of future expansion potential as well. Especially now they've set it in their own IP world.
Yeah, this one's set in the Descent universe, which I prefer actually to the Warhammer 40 fantasy one they had before. And essentially it is a rethemed version of that, but they have improved on a few things. It's definitely a better game. It's more streamlined. I agree with all the comments that they said. It's very, very cooperative. You really have to talk with each other all the time. There's a lot of combat. It does feel like you're fighting monsters most of the time, and the tricky thing is how you balance the progress on the quest. You need to get the progress on those locations, but you really want to be killing the monsters that are attacking you. So the balance is really nice. It felt very tight. It is one of those that the more you play it, the more you realise how important the cooperation is, and you really need to be very, how you use those aid cards, for example, to give other people the success tokens becomes really, really key. So I really like the package. I think it does a great job. I think it provides a great sense of adventure with all the different scenarios. As I said, loads of variability here. So I'm a big fan of this one. I'd be on an 8.5 out of 10. Right, thanks for watching. That was
Heroes of Terrinoth.